So this bear goes into a bar. He goes up to the bartender and he says, "Bartender, give me a beer." And the bartender says, "Well, sure, but why the big pause?" So, as you can tell, I've developed a bit of a reputation as an educator, both within Teton Science Schools and other institutions. I tell really bad jokes. And as you'll be able to tell from this presentation, I take really bad selfies. In fact, the selfie thing got so bad at one point that Colby Mitchell put together a slideshow of just my awful selfies with students. Despite the low quality of this humor, I have discovered some interesting effects that my jokes have had on both my students and myself. I was able to build better relationships. I felt connected to my students. They smiled at me when they saw me. Quieter students felt more confident to approach me. I felt more confident about myself. I knew I always had a fallback if nothing else was working. For example, did you hear about the pirate who lost his pants? Well, he found his booty. So I began to wonder about the science of humor, and specifically the effects that humor might have in education. What role can humor play, both in the classroom and in the field? To my amazement, though maybe not to yours, there's an absolute abundance of research into humor in education. From the role of funny play in pre-kindergarten to college professors using humor to reduce anxiety in so-called dread classes. Humor in this context, by the by, is defined as jokes, riddles, puns, funny stories, humorous comments, and others. If used in the right way, humor can have an enormous positive effect on students and teachers. It can lower anxiety. It can increase attention, motivation, knowledge retention. It can increase comprehension. It can build community, promote creativity, reduce conflict, set people at ease. It can increase student learning outcomes. Humor also results in laughter. Laughter is an amazing community builder. It can be contagious, infectious, communal. Laughing is healthy, reduces pain, stress, and anxiety. It's literally good for you. That's right, kids! Humor and laughter not only make for better learning outcomes and stronger communities, they also make healthy students. You got it, Raven. In order to attain these positive outcomes, humor needs to be appropriate. It's most effective when it's appropriate to the situation, when it reflects the personality of the teacher, when it's inclusive and accommodates different students and learning styles, and when it's rooted in the context of student, place, and content. Humor could be presented in many different ways. It could be used to fill up time during lulls or as a transition. It could be a part of the lesson itself, a silly experiment, a strange story told to teach grammar and writing, or a tactic to teach classroom management. It could be spontaneous, finding a funny moment and falling out of a chair, or thinking of a pun. It could also be planned, found in a syllabus, or part of an explanation of geology. Don't take them for granted. The Tetons are really nice. The rest is all schist. For all the potential benefits, if used inappropriately or too much, humor can have an extremely negative effect. Humor can't be directed at an individual or group. It can't be at the expense of someone else except perhaps yourself. It can't target a student's anxiety, discomfort, or difference. If it does any of these things, humor will cause alienation, feelings of hopelessness, loneliness, and it'll cause students to shut their minds to learning. If we're to use humor, it needs to be thoughtful and intentional. For example, hey Amy!
Yes, Ben?
I've got a new job.
What's your new job?
Well, I design animations for Google Slide presentations.
How's your new job going?
Well, let me tell you, I'm transitioning smoothly. So, what are the take-home points? Well, you don't have to tell jokes. You don't have to use humor. As an educator, find a balance and find what works for you. Be your authentic self. If you do want to improve at humor, you can practice. Take a piece of paper with you into the field with jokes written down. Build the jokes or the other humor pieces into your lesson plan. Ultimately, play to your strengths, build relationships, reduce anxiety, and meet students where they are. Humor can be a teaching tool to achieve positive student outcomes. It can't be everything. It is one tool among many and shouldn't be confused with a panacea for all education. It's a supplemental tool, not the whole thing. But if used well, humor and even terrible jokes can be enormously effective in education. Thanks for coming, everybody!
Yay!